All right, my friend. This program is going to take a slightly different approach than you may be used to. So in this program, I've done my best to stick with the philosophy of let's not make coaching high school kids more complicated than it needs to be. Years of only being able to access information from college and elite coaches has led to this false belief that training high school 400 runners is like training elite 400 runners, but maybe with less volume. And that, my friend, is a fallacy. So I'm going to take an extremely practical approach of here's what I do with high school kids, when I do it, and why I do it, and focus less on trying to give an in-depth scientific presentation, because that's boring and it's also unnecessary. If you want science class, you have to find that elsewhere. Now, ultimately, I think there are three specific reasons that my athletes overachieve that have nothing to do with whether we do 30s or 50s on Monday or 600s or 200s on Tuesday and at what pace and with how much rest. And these factors form the foundation of this program. The first is that I don't subscribe to the concept of labels. I'm not a slave to terminology, and I don't let these concepts box me into a particular way of doing things. Secondly, because we're dealing with kids who are really young, the science of mind plays a bigger role in my programming than the science of periodization, which I don't particularly believe in a 12-week high school season. Because I'm not trying to take adults from 45 flat to 44 flat, so I shouldn't be doing the same things as the coaches who are. And third, everything that I do is rooted in developing greater overall athletic ability, biomotor skill, the 5 primary physical capacities required for success in athletics: speed, strength, mobility, coordination, and endurance. So these principles are the foundation of how I approach this event group. And to get us vibrating at the same frequency, I want to start off with a Bruce Lee quote that will set the tone for this entire program. Emptiness is the starting point. In order to taste my cup of water, you must first empty your cup. My friend, drop all your preconceived and fixed ideas and be neutral. Do you know why this cup is useful? Because it is empty. That's a great Bruce Lee quote. So moving forward, that's where I want us to go with this. Now, at the end of the day, though, we have to choose a path. We have to have some justification for the workouts we write. But that justification, that path, in my opinion, is based on our situation and not on dogmatically following a doctrine of some other guru. So following college and elite systems is incoherent with the realities of the high school level. And so let's look at some of the fundamental differences between high school and college and how they affect our programming. Right, season length. We have a short 12-week season compared to a 30, 40-week season at the college level. We have to get into certain things right away, and we don't have time for certain things. That affects everything we do. Training age. We're dealing with kids sometimes 0 training age, 1, maybe 2 if you're lucky. Not the beasts that these elite college level coaches put through their grinder. That affects everything that we do. Talent. How many truly talented kids do you have on your team? 1, 2, maybe enough to fill out a relay? Right? We don't have a team full of kids who are probably better than most of what you get every year. Race duration. 400 is still 400 whether you're running 43 or 63. But the amount of time you spend on the track is a lot longer when you're talking about a 63-second high school girl and a 53-second college girl. That has a very specific application in terms of the workouts we do and why. And then group size. If you have a really large training group, how you run your program is going to be different than coaches who have small training groups. If I have 70 kids in my group, I can't do ladders. I never do ladders in my program. We're not going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, because that's too many times to give when I got groups of 7 going off every 3 seconds. It's not possible. That affects what you do and what you can do. But ultimately, I know how the world works. What you really want to know is whether you should be running a short to long program or a long to short program, and why, and what's best for high school track and field long sprinters. So, very quickly, the short to long program is just that speed-based philosophy. More speed, acceleration, speed endurance, max velocity, that kind of work. And less, quote-unquote, longer runs. And your long to short is that endurance-based philosophy where you're doing longer stuff and long repeats and endurance runs and 6s and 8s and all types of longer stuff. Two different philosophies. Those are the basics of them. But here's an idea I want you to consider, and it's one that fundamentally shapes this entire program, my entire program, both in general terms and in specific detail. Short to long and long to short are illusions, concepts. The moment we define our approach as being a particular way is the moment we become slaves to that way. When I used to say, I'm a short to long guy, that's the best way to develop long sprinters, don't do that long stuff, I cut myself off from all the potential value inherent in the so-called long to short approach. And that's just an ego issue, if I'm being honest. What I'm asking you to do is empty your cup. So let's get back to some Bruce Lee real quick. Styles tend to not only separate man, because they have their own doctrines, and then the doctrine became the gospel truth that you cannot change. But if you do not have a style, if you just say, well, here I am as a human being, how can I express myself totally and completely? Now, that way you won't create a style, because style is a crystallization. That way it's a process of continuing growth. Consider the number of options you open yourself up to when you free yourself from these labels. We never go longer than 200 meters. We always run 600s during the general prep phase. 5-mile runs develop the kind of strength that's required to finish a 400. When you free yourself from these labels, from these appearances, it immediately frees you to coach what you see. Maybe certain types of athletes respond to certain types of training. Maybe your facilities dictate something. But coach what you see, not what some article or some guru tells you you have to do. Myself included. Now, getting back to this idea that we have to do something, we have to have some foundation for why we're doing what we're doing, I think we can base a lot of that on the type of athletes we have, the type of athletes you coach. So let's take a quick look at the types of 400-meter runners, again, in general terms. So you have your 100, 200 types. These are, your quick starters. They're going to have more muscular builds, a little bit more temperamental sometimes. They treat endurance work like it's a death march. Right? If you have these type of kids, you're probably going to follow more of what we would call the quote-unquote short to long approach. More fast stuff, more power work, less long runs. They adapt to this kind of thing, and this is what you're going to want to do with them. I think this is going to get you the best results. Next, you have what I call the 400, 200 types. Primarily 400 runners can go down to the 2, run a 4x1, run a dual meet type of open 100, maybe even give you maybe they're a 600 runner. For me, these are mostly my soccer types, right? Probably fancy themselves as 100, 200 runners when they come in, but they're not that fast, and they're not that explosive, right? They're probably, if they're going to drop down, again, be a leg on your 4x1 team, run the 4x4, they tend to separate themselves from your short sprint types at the end of booty lock workouts. These hybrid type kids who are going to see a mixture of both types of training, the middle path. So which end of the spectrum you tend to skew in a particular day based on your own preferences, your own biases, the situation that you're in, that's the art of coaching. But I call this the Buddhist approach, the middle path. And it's the one I tend to take because I find oftentimes that extremes in all elements of life don't get us the results we're looking for. And then, of course, you have your 400, 800 types. Now, the truth is I don't really work with these kids, though I do coach the 600. But so these kids are going to be more of your endurance types, probably soccer or one of those soccer type sports, lacrosse, or field hockey, whatever, cross country in the fall. They don't get out well in the faster workouts, but they tend to make up ground as fatigue sets in. Probably the least coordinated of the three groups. They react well to the endurance stuff. They kind of like maybe going out for a run or doing some longer stuff, but they still get frustrated when they do too much endurance work and not enough of the strength and power work. These type of kids, especially if you need them in the 8, are going to be trained more like long sprinters. So while it's difficult to try to write individualized programs for each of these types if they're within your group, you have to try to look at, in my opinion, a group individualized program. Have a general philosophy, but be ready to split the group maybe on a particular day into more of a 100, 200 type workout and maybe more of a 400, 200 type workout or 400, 800, whatever the case may be. That's going to get you the best approach. Coaching what you see, adapting to what's in front of you, as opposed to just trying to force a style on an athlete, even if it doesn't fit them.